hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am Jamie Vaughn, your host, and I am so excited to have my guest, Elissa Kalver, on my show. I actually met Elissa. We met on social media.
Yeah.
I ran across you and I was really enamored with what you were doing with your survivorship for your breast cancer. And just so my audience knows, Elissa was diagnosed with HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer in July of 2021, just a few days before her daughter's first birthday. Everyone asked how they could help and what they could do, which made her think about how easy it was to ask for help when she was pregnant or getting married, because she had gift registries. I mean, go figure. That's what we have for weddings and baby showers and things like that. So she was inspired to create the very first nonprofit gift registry for cancer patients called wegotthis.org. How clever, Elissa. It's so great to have you on my show. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yes, so excited to be here and excited to chat. Love seeing all your posts and everything you've been doing.
Well, thank you. I think it's really cool that we have a sisterhood like we do. And I've actually put into the fold a brotherhood with male breast cancer, and just having everyone come together to help in so many different ways. And later in the program, I am going to talk to you about this new gift registry for cancer patients because it's so dang brilliant. So I would love for you to share with our audience who Elissa was before breast cancer. What were you doing? What was your mindset like? All the things.
Yeah, I mean, I was always doing a lot of things throughout my life. I played sports in high school and through college, and I always had definitely a desire for adventure and always keeping busy. That definitely kept me busy through my adult life too. I was previously mainly working in financial services for corporate retirement plans, most recently for ADP covering Southern California. And before that, I actually owned a gym for several years as well, a cardio boxing gym here in Woodland Hills in California, and just kind of dipping my feet in all these fun areas to keep life exciting. I married the love of my life, my husband, Eric, over 10 years ago. And we've been together now almost 15 years. We had, like you mentioned earlier, we gave birth to our daughter, Ellie, in July of 2020. So there was a bit going on in the world then. And it was before her first birthday when things changed a bit. But I think the Elissa that I was then has only been amplified in a lot of ways by my cancer diagnosis, which is a silver lining that I'm really proud of and grateful that I leaned into.
Okay. What a great way to look at it. We look at ourselves before we had cancer, and it's like we have all these hindsight, I don't know, just views about ourselves and what our lives were like. And to be able to take such a crazy piece of life and make it a silver lining, it's so inspiring. And I'm just excited that you look at it that way. So with that, can you tell us what your diagnosis is, what your treatments are like, because you're still in treatment?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed. Initially, the phone call was about biopsies in my left breast and my lymph nodes in my armpit. And that's when I found out that I had breast cancer. And I knew that it was HER2 positive, ER and PR negative. And then it was after the PET scan that I found out it had spread all throughout my liver. Probably I had more cancer in my liver than I did in my breast, and a little bit in my lower spine, L5. So I was metastatic de novo right off the bat. I have no genetic mutation or BRCA or anything like that. So it was definitely surprising without family history. And once that happened, I hopped right into TCHP. So I was on Taxotere, carboplatin, Herceptin, and Perjeta. And then about halfway through that, got a second opinion and dropped the carboplatin. But the initial 8 rounds of chemo was very effective. I mean, after that, I didn't need a lumpectomy or anything. Everything had shrunk to as much as you could hope with metastatic disease. So I got to be on maintenance with Herceptin and Perjeta for about 4 months until one of my scans came back with a recurrence in my left breast. And then I started getting some really crazy headaches. And it turned out that there were actually a couple mets in my brain as well.
Oh, gosh.
So that did recur about a year after my initial diagnosis. I was fortunate enough to go into a clinical trial that combined Enhertu with tucatinib. And that did an amazing job at breaking the blood-brain barrier. And I mean, it was wild. Like within a couple months, my brain tumors had already shrunk about 80%. So I was really grateful for how well it was working. It just crushed my quality of life and it made it really, really hard to live. I was nauseous 10 to 14 days every 3 weeks, and I really couldn't live a normal life. It was really hard. After 6 months of that and having such a full response, I decided to forego that treatment early in order to switch to the treatment that I've been on now for about 2 years, which is Xeloda oral chemo, tucatinib still, and then back on Herceptin infusions.
Okay, so you go in how often for those infusions?
Every 3 weeks for Herceptin.
Okay.
Yeah, just had it last week. And then I take Xeloda 14 days on, 7 days off twice a day, and tucatinib twice a day every day.
And how does that affect your life? What does that look like in your life?
It's definitely all relative. So, compared to the other treatments, this is a dream. Compared to Enhertu, this is a walk in the park, but it's still chemo and it still has those side effects of, mainly for me, it's been severe fatigue. There's a lot of dryness that can happen in your hands and feet, which, is like, oh, no big deal, but it can be really dangerous because you can end up with infections and other things. So I stay really on top of that. I do get a little nauseous, but it's been more manageable with meds. Whereas on the Enhertu, it was like, no matter how much I was on top of my Zofran and Compazine, like I could not get a grasp on that nausea. So those have been the main things. They've definitely increased over time, and we're almost 2 years in. So getting some more achiness, some back pain. But overall, I've been really grateful for the quality of life, I've been able to have, knowing that with metastatic disease, you're on these treatments indefinitely until they stop working. And that's what really crushed my spirit on Enhertu, just because it wasn't just 8 rounds or a set time. It was hopefully forever, right? Like, it'd be amazing if it just continued to work. I couldn't live on that. So what I'm on now, I could, and I hope that I get to continue on. I did recently find out that there's some growth in my left breast, but everything else has been really contained and doing great. So we're pausing a bit before we make any changes just because of how effective this treatment has been. So I'm in a bit of this really odd waiting period where I know that I have a bunch of tumors in my breasts, but it has definitely not gone anywhere else. We did a lot of extensive scans to make sure. So we're going to wait and do a breast MRI again in a couple of months.
Very good. So you kept your breasts, and so you are moving through this with your original breasts. Yes.
Yes. And when this most recent recurrence happened, I'm 3 years in, and I was like, is it time? Can we consider, just doing a double mastectomy where it's confined right now? And my oncologist was open to meeting with the surgeon, and we all discussed it, and the tumor board discussed it. Ultimately, it's so risky for me to go off of chemo for the length of time that I'd have to recover from a mastectomy, and I'd want to do reconstruction, that it's more dangerous than cancer in my breast right now. So
right.
taking a beat on that. I don't know many people with metastatic breast cancer currently who have been doing surgeries, but I know some who have and been really happy with that too. So I definitely always keep it as a tool in our toolbox if we have to use it. But unfortunately, with the fact that it had already spread beyond
Right.
medically, they're not seeing a scientific reason for it to make sense.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's really cool. It sounds like you have a really good team to be working on this, and people looking on the tumor board, and that's good to know. I wanted to ask you one question that we didn't discuss before, but how is your husband with this, and your daughter for that matter?
Yeah. Well, so my husband's amazing. When I first got diagnosed and we went in, we already knew that I had it in my breast and my lymph nodes. And then we didn't know yet about the results of the PET scans. So we went into that appointment when they showed us the PET scan. That was like my husband hyperventilating into a paper bag moment, and it was really that moment where that was happening. I was just trying to get whatever answers I could. I was being handed this packet of resources. And that was a big part of what kind of inspired me of like, there has to be a better way to figure out what it is that we need and how to get help. It was after that appointment where my husband and I had a discussion where I was like, I need you to have all the feelings that you have and go through that. I just know that I can't have those with me. Like I need to be able to also, I can't be taking care of you while I'm taking care of me. And that was the only time that happened. And ever since then, we've been such an amazing team. I'm so grateful for him. Our circumstance within this cancer world has changed so much throughout the past 3 years, and it's going to continue to change for many years to come. And so I'm lucky that I have a good teammate on my side. With my daughter, we never hid from her like that I was sick or had cancer. I've used the word cancer around her, but she was so young that we never had explicitly explained what cancer was. So we actually just did that this past weekend, and it was really great. We did a couple books. There's one called The Dot Method that was created by Kelsey Mora that was really great. And then this other book that my friend sent out that was called Cancer Hates Kisses.
Oh.
Yeah, my friend.
Okay.
And the whole book's about like the things that cancer hates that we have to keep doing. And it really stuck with her. So like this morning, I went to the gym early before she left for school. And when I came back, she was like, Mommy, Daddy said that cancer hates when you work out. And I was like, yeah, cancer hates it when I'm healthy.
I love it.
Yeah. And then she ran over and gave me a ton of kisses. She's like, it hates this too. It's been really a big release being very direct about it, which I only have 24 hours to speak on, but I feel really good about it.
I would love to be able to put those links to those books in our show notes so that people can order those books, because I think it's such a great resource for people. And, you bring up that the day that you were handed the big packet of resources. I remember getting that big packet, and I swear, I don't even think I ever even looked in it. And even I finally was given a nurse navigator where I had to kind of weed through and figure out questions to ask her, what I was needing. But it's so overwhelming for both the person who is diagnosed and their caregiver. It's just overwhelming. And so I love that there are people like you who are trying to find a better way to be able to, I guess, give that information or any kind of resource, whether it be reading something or something physical. And by the way, I'm so glad that you and your husband are a great team, because that doesn't happen all the time. I just really love when caregivers listen to this podcast, because it's so important. You brought something up, about your husband. It's really important for him to be able to move through his emotions. And my husband and I also had those conversations, and we have been seeing a therapist ever since. It's been about 1.5 years since we've been seeing one. And it's helped us tremendously, because it's happening to the family, and it's hard for them to really truly understand what we're going through. But having a strong marriage like that, it's very telling when a couple can stay together and move forward and through with it. So I really wish that for everyone else. Let's talk about wegotthis.org, because that is, again, something that I was so drawn to. I want to know how that happened. And you have a team that goes along with this as well. Tell us all the things, Elissa.
Yeah, well, wegotthis.org is my life's mission. And it was the gap that I saw in cancer care. And when I was diagnosed when everyone asking how they could help and what they could do. And that was so easy with baby and wedding registries. And it was really complicated in this hard time. One, I had no idea what I needed. And then also, I really didn't want to ask for help. Like when everyone texted, it was just like, just you texting and reaching out means the world to me. And I didn't really want to ask much beyond that. So coming up with this idea, it was the 5th round of chemo, my initial chemo when I was on TCHP. And, I wasn't feeling well. I was in those period of time when I had no taste and I couldn't get out of bed and those things. And I just was like, there needs to be something else for me to work on right now. And I started thinking about that problem that I wanted to solve. And I've always been very entrepreneurial. I went to school for entrepreneurship. And, you always start with what's the problem. And that was the problem to me. And so I started researching a lot because I wanted to make sure if anything existed like it, any other nonprofits, then I would just volunteer and help them and see what I could do and use it.
Yeah.
But nothing did. Nothing existed like it. I started making some calls to other friends that I went to Babson College with and other entrepreneurial tech minds because I'm not from the tech space at all. My background is all financial services. And just started kind of coming up with much smaller scale, like helping people locally in LA with breast cancer, getting what they need. I was like, that I feel like I could figure out, I can help a bunch of people. We could do that right away. It'd be great. And as I started talking more and more, this idea of it being a whole platform and being a gift registry like Babylist or Zola or something else came to light. And I wasn't sure if that was something I could really do. So I had a lot of friends encouraging me to start a GoFundMe for the nonprofit because I had never wanted to do one for myself, which there's nothing wrong with doing. I just didn't feel like I fit anywhere with what was happening. And so I started the GoFundMe, and that's when I really felt like I had this passion and this thing that I knew I needed to bring to life. And initially, I was going to do the GoFundMe for like 10 or 20,000. And a bunch of friends were like, that's not enough money to do what you're trying to do. Like, if you really want to do an open source registry, like, you're going to need at least 6 figures to do this. And I was like, I can't fail right now. Like, if I ask for 100,000 and I get 30,000, like, that's amazing, right? Like, that's more than I even initially thought. So I don't want to do that and then like set myself up for failure and it doesn't happen. And so a friend of mine helped me do the video for the GoFundMe. I talked it through. I started putting together some theoretical budgets and what it would take and the 501c3 and all these elements. And I just went for it and I did the 100,000. Yeah, one friend, and I'm going to credit my friend Brian Packer. He said, when I said I'm thinking 10,000, he said, I'm thinking you need to add a 0 to that. And that's what I did. And we raised in the GoFundMe 105,000. We've raised $750,000 since in the past 2.5 years.
Wow.
That has allowed us to do so much. We also have so much more we want to do. And I know it sounds like such a tremendous amount of money, but for me, I felt like that amount of money, like research and all that is so important. And alongside that, I want to make sure we're also focusing on quality of life in the patient. And where some of these numbers are kind of a drop in the bucket for research, they're like hugely impactful for creating this whole community of giving and receiving that I wanted to do. That's nationwide. And we're working on, trying to push that out global. We've had a lot of requests in Canada. But the website itself was able to really get going right away. But in order to funnel all of the funding towards the platform and towards the mission, I started doing everything on my own. So I had different people helping out in different capacities, mainly volunteering in that, and then trying to using the money in the areas that we couldn't just pull free work from, and volunteering personally myself for the past 2.5 years as well. And then eventually getting to the point where starting to build this team that is kind of a new force that makes me really excited about where we can take this next.
Yeah, that inspires me so much. I'm thinking about my own nonprofit with Test Those Breasts and thinking about all the possibilities and collaboration with other nonprofits. And the fact that you raise that kind of money just tells you what the community wants. And like they have that vested interest in helping other people. So when someone goes to the website, how does it work? What do they do? How do they know? Because like with wedding and baby registries, we know like we're on there with our spouse or whatever, or our fiance or whoever, and we are looking at things that we think that we might want to have, and we choose things and we put it in the registry. How do breast cancer patients know what they need?
Yeah, well, so in terms of just logistically putting it in, it's exactly the same. And you don't have to only have breast cancer. It's for any type of cancer.
Oh,
Obviously, it's
great.
directly connected to breast cancer, but this site is for everyone. That's why
Mhm.
it's We Got This. So not just the patient, but the caregivers too. I have some friends right now with some recurrences that are in their brain and it's preventing them from being able to do stuff. So their husband or their friend are helping. This is just like how you would on a GoFundMe or something else. Knowing what you need is a big part. And that's where we're really expanding our team and bandwidth right now, because I can't be the only one to suggest that, right? What I want and need is totally different from someone else. And like we talked about, I mean, my needs for chemo might be totally different from someone's needs for a double mastectomy or a different kind of chemo. I'm hormone negative. I'm not going through early menopause. There's so many other resources for that I wouldn't even use or know about yet. So that's important. On the website, we have a recommendations page, and the recommendations are products and services. So those are things like getting your eyebrows microbladed was a big one for me to know about. Sleep Again pillows is a great one if you're going through a mastectomy or surgery that allows you to not have to roll over on your side and sleep comfortably. Any of those kinds of ideas. And then the resources side are free resources, other nonprofits. Just learned recently there's some clinical trials for cold capping. Like as we learn about these
Great.
kinds of resources, we funnel them into that page. So our website is really 3 buckets, and it's registries, recommendations, and resources.
Okay.
And those are the 3 things that we completely focus on, so that when someone asks for support groups or financial funding or other things, which at first I would really try to do it all myself. Like if someone needed something, I would pull funding and try to do that. And I realized that I can't accomplish our mission, and help everyone if I focus on that and end up using up all of our resources. So we've partnered so well with so many other nonprofits. That's my vibe before and during cancer. I'm such a collaborator and I love partnering and, truly believe we're stronger together. A great example of that is our friend Janine. She was a registry we recently featured on our Instagram. She had just finished breast cancer treatment for breast cancer, and then got some news that she had new cancer in her thyroid, and she thought she was going to get to go back to work and couldn't. So it was literally to the point where she couldn't pay next month's rent. And we reached out to a great nonprofit here in LA called The Change Reaction. We explained her need, and we had met them just through our networks of bringing in as many resources as we can. Within a couple days, they got her a check out for her rent.
Love it.
Pretty awesome.
That's one of the things that I'm working on. I'm still in the working stages of everything, is to be able to have that resource page that's being built. My website is, a lot of it's done, but the resource page itself. So for example, under one of the categories that I'll have on resources will be wegotthis.org, so that people know where to go to have this registry. And anyone, and like you, just because mine's called Test Those Breasts, most people with other cancers can go to my website and still be able to use resources in there. So it sounds very similar, where I could have you on the resource page, and I'll even have a category where it'll have books and podcasts so that people can be directed to different things that they can listen to or read.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I love the fact that you have a recommendation page, because before cancer, I was like, I wouldn't even know what to even put on the registry.
Yeah.
So to have those recommendations, and that you open it up to obviously anyone with cancer, is just phenomenal. I love it. I'm so inspired by this, and I'm so glad that you were able to do the research and make sure that there was no one else doing that. And even if there was, you had a plan to be able to help volunteer for that, because what a great idea.
And there's certain things that do need to overlap. Like I think it's so important that all nonprofits have the resource pages, because you don't know where the patients, survivors, thriver, caregivers, you don't know where they're going to end up. And so, we're a resource on so many other nonprofits' websites, and they're a resource on ours. And I think that just like with what you're saying with yours, you never know where people are going to find you. And it's just, we just want people to have what they need is the biggest goal.
Yep. Not all resources are going to resonate with every single person, but it's nice to be able to have that sort of buffet of just resources for people to pick and choose from and according to what is helpful to them. That was another thing too, is that I envision having the funds to be able so that people can apply for funds for people who need to pay their rent, their mortgage, or whatever, put food on the table. And I want to be able to award people with a bag of money, once a month, twice a month, whatever it takes. So we'll have to see where that goes. But it is a lot of work, Elissa. Sometimes some people have a control thing where they want to work on everything, and it does just sort of thin out your efforts. Like, it's so hard. There's a lot of work that goes behind what you do. And I only know this, I'm on a smaller level than you are. And I already know how much work it takes to put into do these podcasts and apply for a 501(c) and ask for donations and things like that, and get somebody to do a website and get people to edit my podcast. It takes a lot of work. So I am very, very grateful for what you have out there. And I'm just so happy that you interviewed with me. I think hopefully we can get people to go to your website. We're going to have that in the show notes. I would like to ask you, I always ask this, is there any kind of piece of advice that you can give to people who've never been diagnosed with cancer?
So people who don't have cancer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason I ask this, I do this every time because I find it a very fascinating question and the answers that I get. Before I had been diagnosed, I knew a lot about breast cancer, but I didn't know a lot about breast cancer. And so when I was diagnosed, I was so overwhelmed with stuff that I'm like, holy cow, it never even occurred to me. And when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, breast cancer, any cancer, was not even on my radar. And so I really feel like it should be on people's radar, not to scare them, but to be more aware of what's going on with their bodies and, being able to advocate for themselves if they're feeling something that's not right, being able to advocate for themselves. And so when I do these podcasts, sometimes I think that I'm preaching to the choir, or we're preaching to the choir, right? To people who have had cancer or have cancer now. We need to reach people that have never had it so they understand what to look for. They understand what kind of steps they can take if they are diagnosed. So I like to always ask that question.
Yeah, I love it. So the biggest things that I always say is that we're all different. We're like a fingerprint. I still don't know everything about breast cancer. And I feel like I know quite a bit, in the past couple of years, but it's super rare to meet someone else with your exact scenario of cancer. We're all so different. I think that the metastatic community, especially, people get really scared. That can be the biggest fear of people, is that it comes back metastatic. And the biggest fear of someone without cancer is that they get cancer. And rather than being afraid of us or becoming like us, I think that really embracing what's there. I have stage 4 breast cancer. I've had tumors throughout my body and in my brain. And I am living each day very fully. I was just boxing this morning. I went golfing yesterday. I have some really hard days too, and it's tough, and my life looks totally different now, but I'm living with it. And there's a lot of treatments out there to live with it in the meantime of curing it. And I really hope that, I think there has been a good, resurgence even since I've been in the metastatic community, but I really hope that that continues, because everything is important. Prevention is important. Treating it is important. Like, it's all important. And I think that it gets skewed sometimes because of a lot of times the people who don't have cancer have these preconceived notions and they don't quite understand. Like, when I tell someone right now that I have cancer, they're very confused. So I always immediately am like, well, the chemo I'm currently on doesn't make me lose my hair, but I've been on nonstop chemo for 3 years. I just think it's really important to focus on that. I think it's also important to know that we're all different. So while some people might love blankets or candles or coloring books, we're not all the same. And that's why I think the gift registry is so important too. When I had my daughter, like, everyone uses diapers, or not everyone, I shouldn't even say that. Some people use diapers. Some people use cloth diapers. Some people don't use diapers at all. Like, there are so many elements to who we are, and that shouldn't change when we're diagnosed with cancer. We should still be treated like individuals. The bar shouldn't be set lower for us. Like, we're still humans and we're here and we deserve to be treated as such. So I hope that when people see that, they don't get scared. I hope that they don't get cancer. But in the case that they do, I hope that embracing our cancer community as a whole can help them.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. My friend Natalie Stevenson here with Cancer Community Clubhouse. It's a nonprofit here in town, and she started that, and she's got metastatic cancer. And she told me, I've heard her speak in front of people too. It's like we have these two different worlds. We have a world where sometimes we are not doing okay, like right over here, right? Because we have metastatic breast cancer or whatever cancer. And then we have another world where we are living with it. We have a full life. We go out, we socialize, we do the things that we can do. And we can have those two worlds exist at the same time. And I thought that was really interesting. Such a really interesting perspective.
I love that.
Well, Elissa, this has been so amazing, and I cannot wait to put you on my resource page. And the next time because we hear about people being diagnosed all the time, I really want to share that website with them so that they can be able to get into that registry and use that to the best of their ability to help them with their journey. So thank you so much. I appreciate everything you have shared with us today. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we disconnect?
The biggest thing that I've been saying a lot is during that period of time when I was on Enhertu, which again is a great miracle drug and helped me so much. And all of us are different in our reactions. It was really hard for me to live on. And it was the first time when I really had to take a look at my life and say, can I live this way? And the answer was no. And I made a change. It really ingrained in my mind that we don't have to endure suffering to prove our resilience. And we don't have to suffer through things to be tough, to be survivors or thrivers and all that, which are words that are great and really resonate with me. But you need to identify with what it means to you. And we don't need to set the bar lower because we have cancer. We need to really meet ourselves where we're at. And if there's something that can make you feel better or help you out, and if people ask if they can help, let them. Try to find those things and these resources. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to advocate for yourself. I've been through multiple medical teams before finding the right one, but they're there. And it's pretty amazing what the breast cancer community does on all ends, from research to support and all the great things you're saying and the people you interview and do. And so my biggest advice is to prioritize living, because we all deserve to live.
I love that. Such a great piece of advice. And I even love it for myself now because, I am a survivor, but I do think to myself, am I going to get it again? And it happens all the time. So I have to kind of not dwell on it, but at the same time, know that I can make it through and I've got the resources to help me. So thank you very much, Elissa. I appreciate it again. And to my audience, thank you again for joining me on this episode of Test Those Breasts and on your favorite platform. Again, I'd really appreciate if you can rate and review. It does help. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.